Hey there and welcome back to another Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man video. And today we're going to continue where we left off last time and talk about episode 2, The Parker Luck. Last time, with episode 1, we left off with the massive cliffhanger of Norman Osborne coming to visit the Parker household after Peter as Spider-Man saved Norman's son Harry from being brutally beaten by thugs. It was a pretty short scene that didn't give much away, and simply served as an interesting endpoint to the first episode, meeting the iconic nemesis. So this is where we pick up after the recap and the intro theme plays, with Peter being super hyped to meet Norman, as he's a big shot businessman and scientist, and apparently one of the most famous men in New York City, although that might just be from Peter's fanboy perspective. Immediately I figured that Norman had tracked him down after Harry had been rescued, probably followed a trail of CCTV or something like that. Although Norman simply gives the excuse that he's there to offer Peter an internship as part of an outreach program which picks a bunch of highly talented students and brings them into the Oscorp family. Now in the end, I'm pretty sure that it isn't actually true that Norman already knows that Peter's Spider-Man, and that this is all just one big old coincidence, but it does feel like the perfect setup, doesn't it? Especially with how nice he's treating him and wanting him to go straight into his office. Maybe he's just a straight up nice guy at first, before he gets goblinified? The scene then ends with a classic New York City apartment trope, with the Parkers celebrating only for some angry neighbour to bang on the floor and tell them to shut the hell up. We then cut to the next day, before school I presume, with Spider-Man laying the smack down upon some random criminal. Once again we're dealing with cartoon logic, because Peter either punches or kicks this guy hard enough that it cracks the chimney thing. So either the chimney is very weak and brittle, or Peter absolutely belted this guy. Which means that wherever he was kicked or punched would probably be shattered, as would the dude's back from hitting that chimney so hard. Probably on par with that guy getting bricked in episode 1. Dead meat. Also, I gotta say, this guy didn't even break the law, right? Yes, he took photos of the lady's passcode to her apartment so he could rob her later, but I feel like he hasn't actually technically broken the law. Or at least not severely. Probably should have waited for him to already bust in. Who's gonna waste time chasing up charges for this? The evidence isn't even all that good. Regardless though, I enjoyed Peter's banterous monologue, and I like that he's already showing so much personality. Some of Spider-Man's best moments are his smack talk to the villains he fights, so I hope they stick with that sort of thing going forward. It adds a lot to his personality. We then just get a fun little scene that continues to build that friendship between Peter and Lonnie, with Lonnie introducing Peter to all his football friends, and then getting them all to celebrate Peter's start to his internship, with Peter actually getting in amongst it and chanting his own name, until his teacher comes out to scold him. I'm honestly loving these slice-of-life type scenes and sequences. Not everything has to be full gung-ho Spider-Man action all the time, and taking time to flesh out the characters and showcase these smaller moments is very important too. I think that's really how the best shows set themselves apart. They dive deep into the wider world they're showcasing, and by doing so, they're capable of really getting to the heart of the characters and giving the audience that connection to them. Then it's over to the football game where Nico slightly ribs Peter for taking an internship with Osborne, as since he's a billionaire or whatever, there's a 100% chance that he's secretly a piece of shit of some kind. Yeah, probably true. Hard to get that rich without being a bad person, or at the very least, making some pretty heartless decisions. Peter even agrees, but he figured the chance of getting his hands on some high-level tech is a good enough reason to sacrifice your morality. I'd like to say I disagree, but I don't know. He kinda does have a point. When would he ever have the chance to access these types of resources ever again? Plus he's getting paid, and he's so young. Oh well. Pearl then comes over, having overheard what they were talking about, and she congratulates Peter, who, despite actually liking Lonnie and being friends with him now, still can't resist trying to make himself seem all impressive with the, "Oh yeah, Aunt May says my internship makes me seem all grown up." Come on, kid, it's not gonna happen and it's painful to watch. I mean, surely this dynamic is not gonna be the end game for his character, right? I just don't see how it would make any sense for them to end up together. I guess if you write it well, I could accept it, but for now she seems like a red herring love interest. Maybe they'll introduce somebody else for him later on. Might not even be this season, might be next season if they go to season 2. Peter realizes that he's going to be late to his internship if he doesn't get a move on, and since their school team, the Ravens, are whooping the other team, he doesn't feel like he's going to miss out on much. I have to say, high school football seems like a really rough deal. You're almost certainly setting yourself up to develop CTE in the future, you don't get paid, and after all of that, if you're on a trash team, you don't even get the joy of winning a match. I just don't see an upside. Also, turns out it's not just Peter who's lusting after Lonnie's girlfriend either, as whilst Nico's upset to see Peter leave so early, as soon as she realizes it's just going to be her and Pearl in the stands chilling together, suddenly it's all well and good. Poor Lonnie can't trust anybody in this school. So Peter thinks that for once, he's going to be on time for something, only to be told by the door guard that he's late, despite arriving 2 minutes before the start time. I'll be honest, this is just a learning curve thing, isn't it? The reality is that when you're turning up at an appointment like this, you should be turning up in advance, well in advance. But then again, what 14-year-old is actually going to know this kind of thing? I really loved in this scene how the door guard just did not care one bit about Peter, scolding him for being late in the most monotone voice he could muster, scoffing at Peter's assertions that he's supposed to go straight up to Norman's office immediately when he arrives for a proper introduction, and then forcing him to keep one of the worst photo IDs I've ever seen in my life. I mean, I've had some bad ones in my day, including a working with children card that looked like a tweaker's mugshot, but this one has to take the cake. Peter then arrives on the floor where the internship's going to take place, and then, well, I guess this show's just going to be overflowing with superpowered people, isn't it? Legit, almost every character Peter's interacting with seems like they're being set up to have important roles going forward as either heroes or villains in the story. He meets Jean, aka Finesse, Amadeus Cho, and Asha, who are all heroic characters, pretty sure. Also, their teacher is the supervillain, the Wizard. Although, you could never tell he was going to end up as a villain from his personality. Immediately, all the other interns fit into some very clear-cut personality types. Asha's friendly and upbeat, while seemingly also being a little bit goofy. I thought the gag about her being excited to meet people from all over the world, thinking the 3 areas of New York mentioned were in completely different places, was pretty funny. Jean seems sort of cool and aloof, whilst Amadeus is a bit arrogant and a mean prankster type, fooling Peter into thinking he's their professor simply to mess with him. Seems like a peach of a guy. In order to determine which division each intern's going to be suited for, Whitman gets them all to do a series of tasks, with each intern getting filtered out until it's just Peter left, who's then chosen by Dr. Carla Connors, a gender-swapped lizard. Man, they really are just having everybody Peter meets and interacts with being some sort of big-time character, aren't they? It's a pretty stacked cast of characters. So Carla Connors is the head of the energy division, and is working to create a self-sustaining battery similar to the Stark arc reactor. Whilst Peter at first doesn't seem all that keen on the energy division, having wanted to work with robotics, she quickly wins him over, and we have a fun little science montage of her teaching him the core concepts of what they're going to be dealing with. Okay, so once again, this is a Lonnie situation, right? Where they get you to really care about this kind, mentor-type character, only to rug pull you and make it all the more tragic when she gets turned into the lizard, and Peter has to fight her. God damn! When all the payoffs of these villain turns starts to hit, it's gonna feel like the tone of the show is changing rather drastically, doesn't it? It'll become way more emotional and intense. Well, that's something for another day. For now, let's just enjoy the build-up to all those big moments. Nico then calls Peter to tell him that their team won the game, with Peter showcasing his horrendous knowledge of sports in general. I do wonder though, how much of this is meant to be funny banter, and how much of him is being a legit spud? Because that is an impressive lack of knowledge, to the point that it feels like he's just putting it on to make her laugh. Regardless though, it seems like the two of them are coming up in the world, with them being invited to an after party. Nico doesn't want to go to the party without Peter, and he assures her that after his work's done, he's going to be there. Of course, we the audience know that this is simply not true. After all, if he did go to the party, there wouldn't be any time for any sort of action sequence or big event for the episode. I enjoy slice of life as much as the next person, but this is Spider-Man. You need some sort of action, otherwise, what are we doing here? Peter goes to take a break with the other interns, and we have a fun little scene where they all bond and sit watching TV. Love the throwback to the Crusher Hogan pro wrestler character from the comics. I only really knew the Bonesaw character from the 2002 Spider-Man film, but as I've dived into the lore more and more over the years, it does seem like briefly being a pro wrestler was often a key part of Peter's backstory. It's rather funny. Obviously, that sort of storyline probably doesn't fit in with the world they're creating here, although you never know. But it was fun to get the reference nonetheless. We also see them flick through what seems to be a J-drama, K-drama, then Harry at some red carpet event. Okay, so he's famous then. So strange that he's apparently so famous and prominent, and yet he was walking alone in the street with no security, and nobody tried to help him when the thugs were after him. Guess fame really isn't everything. As they channel surf, Peter notices a news report about an active arson attack, and tells them to stay on that program. Instead of giving any sort of rational explanation as to why he'd want to watch it, i.e., he knows people that live near there, he knows the building, etc., etc., he decides to say that he's a pyromaniac who likes watching fire, creeping out all his potential new friends with his glaring red flag. Even worse, after this reveal he immediately leaves, claiming he needs to use the toilet. So they're just left there to stew on what he said. This is the stuff I love about the show. So many versions of Peter in film and TV are presented as being rather, cool, social. Yes, they often get bullied, but it feels forced in that context. Here though, they're really capturing the awkward dweeb vibe perfectly. And it really does help you buy into the idea that nobody would ever guess that this is Spider-Man. So Peter sneaks into the stairwell to suit up and confront the villain who's burning down the building. Here we meet Butane, and he and Spider-Man have a little bit of a back and forth before the battle begins. What I liked here was that Butane's not just presented as some soulless, monstrous killer. He ensured there were no innocent people in the building before he set it alight, so nobody would be caught in the crossfire. So many times it feels like every supervillain and his dog are just so casual with the death of random, innocent people. but here it lets you develop a bit of a villain spectrum. I think it's good world building. So the battle begins, and unlike a lot of other goons, this guy has Spidey at a disadvantage because his fire burns the webs that get shot at him, whilst also burning Spidey's suit. Plus, he's big and strong and wearing armor. So it's a tough fight for Pete. Whilst he is strong, apparently he's not very smart though. Not only does he reveal that he's working for some real estate tycoon to burn down the entire building so the tycoon can buy the land for cheap and build apartments, but he also reveals that this is the wrong building, as Spider-Man points out to him quite helpfully. Whoops. Guess he really is the lowest common denominator. Also, this scene made me think that at some point the mask is going to slip for Norman, and it's going to be revealed that he's not as squeaky clean as Peter would want to think, and that Nico was right. Maybe he paid this guy. Or Fisk, I suppose, because I'm pretty sure he's supposed to appear in this show too, right? It'll be one or the other. But yeah, the battle in the building's pretty fun, and then they take it outside to a pet shop, where it does feel like Peter is about to win, only to notice all these different animals that he has to save. Like I said earlier in the previous video, a villain only needs to kill the hero. The hero needs to protect everybody. So he has to play a sort of game of cat and mouse whilst trying to save a dog, some rats, hamsters, some sort of rodent thing, a bird, and then after he manages to stop Butane by bringing down an aquarium on top of him, he even saves the fish. Honestly, this fight was just a lot of fun. Very goofy, very silly, actually a bit low on battle, but really memorable and engaging nonetheless. This is the type of stuff you want to see in a Spider-Man show. It almost felt like a video game boss fight in a way. Peter then gets a text from Dr. Connors asking where he is, as she's currently getting grilled by a furious Dr. Whitman, as Peter's nowhere to be found inside what's supposed to be a secure lab. When Peter returns, Whitman rips him a new one, and I can't say he's actually wrong to do so. Yeah, we know that Peter did what he did to protect people, but at the same time, nobody else does. And so I think it's fair for this guy to be mad. And on top of that, Peter shouldn't be making these types of commitments if he's always going to prioritize being a superhero. He then gets summoned to Norman's office and thinks he's going to be fired, and has to do the walk of shame as his fellow interns somewhat shit-talk him. At least Arsha's nice enough though. Oh, and he also gets a text from Nico, who's clearly a bit disappointed that he didn't end up going to the party. Whilst in the office, Norman reveals the CCTV footage that shows that Peter is Spider-Man. So, did Norman know that Peter was Spider-Man the whole time? Did he set this up to prove his theory? Or was this just a case of coincidence? I suppose it'll be revealed next episode. So yes, another good episode here. The animation's growing on me, the quips were funny, the action exciting, lots of world and character building. What more could you want? And so before we finish, I would like to remind you that these have all been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the second episode? Did you like it? Hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.